This is the DC that you see in the news and media, but that's just the surface. 1 in 5 DC residents live in poverty.
Circle to DuPont Circle, GW to Georgetown. Homeless encampments are now nestled across our nation's capital.
My name is Felix. I have lived in DC my whole life.
I grew up off of Georgia Avenue, and even though it wasn't necessarily the safest area, I always had somewhere to call home. Unfortunately, not every DC resident has a safe place to call home.
As a child, up to my teenage and adulthood, it's like a revolving door on somebody's couch, basically. The way I grew up, I don't even think I had a stable home long enough until I got on my own, but I was a teenager.
Living in DC is very expensive. There are definitely big differences in wealth, and improving some communities is a priority while others not.
So DC has one of the highest wealth gaps in the United States of any major metropolitan city between those who are at the very upper end of the income spectrum and those people who are at the very lower end. Overall, roughly speaking, about 1 in 5 DC residents lives in poverty. And, as part of that, that means housing is hard to attain and maintain. That means basic necessities such as food are really hard to attain and maintain.
I think one of the things that's unique about the Washington metropolitan area is we have a very high concentration of the working poor. People who may be housed, people who may be working full time and still don't make enough money to provide basic needs for their families. And I'll just give you a clear example. The District of Columbia has the highest minimum wage in the nation. $17 an hour is higher than any of the 50 states as far as a minimum wage, but it is not a living wage. A person working 40 hours a week in the District of Columbia can only afford to pay $800 in rent, and the average one-bedroom apartment is $2,600.
So from an economic perspective, anybody who is making below a certain amount of income in this region is absolutely vulnerable. And what we see is that, unfortunately, that is largely along lines of race. And those are tied to systemic racism, historical injustices that robbed people of their land, opportunities to build careers. And so we are still bearing that out today and living it day to day.
It seems like inequality is a really big issue in this area. I wonder what young residents also think about this issue.
Throughout the years, homelessness has been increasing. I wish DC could do better.
Take on homelessness in DC is that it's very frequent, it's very all over the place.
Homelessness is extremely bad in DC, and the prices continue to skyrocket and negatively impact people of color.
We just found more ways to prevent homelessness. We have so many job opportunities, so many money opportunities, and it's not being pushed out onto the homeless, it's not being pushed out onto the citizens of the Washington, D.C. area.
It really seems like a lot of people are talking about DC's need to make resources more affordable. For example, many DC residents don't have stable housing, and this even is getting a lot of attention in the news.
For the purpose of cleaning and maintenance, you must leave McPherson Square now. All persons remaining may be subject to arrest.
A lot of questions and concerns about how the city is clearing out these homeless camps.
Years ago on New York Avenue, 12th Street, when I was heading home after work, I used to see unhoused people living in the park. Until recently, I didn't. I question where they are located now. Would they even get kicked out of their next location? Unhoused people are most likely always in a survival mode because they never know what could happen next. Sometimes when you see people experiencing homelessness, you don't think about their mental space or life story. I wonder if we might be more understanding if we were actually able to hear about their lives.
Well, I became homeless when I was downsized from a national position that I worked at for 5 years. And in that position, I was able to receive a great severance package. I relocated to the state of Delaware. What happened was that I was not able to find work in time. And so through a process of not being able to pay my rent, not being able to buy food, not being able to do some of the other things that I had been accustomed to doing, I was evicted from my apartment. And so that put me on the path to homelessness. And so I wound up in a women's shelter in Wilmington, Delaware in 2012. And coming out of the shelter, I decided that I wanted to do advocacy around the issue of housing and homelessness, based mainly on the people that I met at the women's shelter, talking with other women, seeing the children there. I said that we can do better than this.
Homeless individual out there has a backstory, and I think it's important that people know that they didn't drop out of the sky homeless. As I myself am formerly homeless for 17 consecutive years, with co-occurring disorders, that means substance abuse and mental health disorders that were untreated. And today, there's no way that I couldn't come back and work in this field because I know what it's like, I know what they need, I know the resources that are needed, and today I just passionately give back. Being homeless and feeling invisible is a very, very low self-esteem feeling for a lot of people that are unhoused because we feel like we have no voice and no one sees us. So reaching out for help was like admitting that I was feeling as low as I felt. The low self-esteem in people that have food insecurities and are unhoused will cause them not to want to reach out for help because then they know the process begins. And the process of change, although I was able to overcome a lot of obstacles and get here, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a lot of courage, especially when you start sharing your story after you're healing from some of your traumas.
Passionate about mental health awareness, and I think a lot of issues regarding homelessness would be solved if mental health was accessible and free of charge.
Since I've gotten sober, I've been able to do what they call an inside job, which means going within myself and everything that I was running from. And today I have a very high self-esteem. I believe in me.
From these stories, I want to remember the invisibility that vulnerable members of our community can feel, and that change can feel impossible. I also found it amazing that Dr. Deborah and Richelle were able to push through such obstacles and shift their mindsets. I hope that as a city we can commit to making changes so that all residents can feel visible and have their needs met.
But I had a lot of people in that process play a part to help me get where I'm at today. And it was actually Pathways to Housing Downtown DC Homeless Outreach collaboration. And in 2008, they came to me and said, you'd be a great candidate for housing. And after being homeless for 17 years and not asking for help, I was in disbelief that I could be helped. I thought I was gonna die in the street, and they actually didn't give up on me. They seen some potential that I didn't see in myself, and they actually came out one night and I said no. And the next day they were back and said, we're not taking no for an answer. And I'm so happy they didn't, or I wouldn't be sitting here today giving you this interview.
Better with that. My thing is, I just want them to see better with getting these veterans off the street that done went and served the country, and they're sleeping in tents.
In order to address the housing challenges in DC, we also need to think about veterans. Avoiding veterans' mental health won't solve the problem.
Let's get them the help that they need. Let's get them back to 100% the way when you got them. Let's get them back to his families or their families the way they were.
In addition to the need of accessible mental health and housing, food access is also a significant challenge in DC.
Where I live, there are 2 grocery stores a few blocks away, but that's not the case in all of DC. For example, in Ward 8, there are very few service groceries, stores for the whole community, and the stores might not be the best. It can be hard to get to a good store. It takes time on public transit, and buses can be very slow and unreliable. Then it can be hard to carry everything on the bus.
Homeless do know there's resources out there. They have the Martha's Table food truck. They do know they can go to Miriam's Kitchen. They do know they go to Zachariah's Kitchen. Sometimes it's just the travel. They might be way up by Foggy Bottom, or they may be way down here at the time that the food is way up there, or way up there at the time that the food is down here. And I think there needs to be even distribution throughout the city in all 4 quadrants, Ward 7 to 8 through 1, that on any single day that someone can receive food.
Unhealthy food might be much more affordable and easily accessible. DC leaders say they care about providing nutritious food to residents and children, but actions don't necessarily show they care. Everyone should be able to access a good grocery store.
Who just don't have no judgmental feeling like I can't speak to that person because one word can change somebody's life. A simple hello.
People want to stereotype those who are food insecure or housing insecure as not being able to work hard. In fact, they really want to work hard. They just are unfortunately stuck in a lot of positions that don't pay well enough.
And it can happen to anybody. And so having more empathy, understanding that it's a societal issue and not an individual issue.
In addition to changing our individual perspectives, I wonder what else can be done.
I believe that housing is a human right, and I believe that every individual has a right to at least in their name and a set of keys. And I advocate for this on a daily basis. I believe that everyone has a right to eat nutritious meals, and that housing is health care.
We as a society value giving people the foundation for a happy and healthy life. We haven't done enough. On a larger level, it's really about, helping hold politicians and other people in society accountable for the fact that we don't think it's okay that in the wealthiest country in the world that there is anybody suffering hunger, that there's anybody suffering food or housing insecurity. So use your voice. Get out there. Tell people that you believe in social justice, you believe in addressing these problems, and because you believe in that, you're only going to elect people that are in line with it.
Organize, come to the Wilson building. There's strength in numbers. Start a rally in front of the Wilson building, walk through every council member's office, because that's where we're going to make the biggest impact, by changing policies and passing laws.
And especially now that they have affordable housing, and that was the biggest problem for District of Columbia, I think that they have came a long way, and they got a long way to go. But
we haven't solved the issue yet, but we have made enormous progress. We have a much better system and much more humane system for, addressing homelessness in this community. There are 11,000 people nearly in subsidized housing across DC who had been formerly homeless. That is historic. We've never had those numbers of people in subsidized housing before. So we have a lot more work to do, but progress is possible.
Through this process, I have learned that this is an even more complicated issue than what I initially thought. So many factors in our lives or our city can contribute to people being unhoused or in a precarious situation. But I also believe that change is possible through the work that advocates and local organizations are doing to create more affordable housing, mental health, resources, and accessible food throughout the city. I hope DC becomes a city where everybody has access to pleasant house and quality food, where families don't worry about where their next meal will come from, but instead are living their lives, raising their families, and creating memories.